Welcome to The Debate. So imagine a massive steel vault, right, down in a downtown bank. It has got thick concrete walls, complex combination locks, time-delayed hinges, all of that.
Sure, just your standard high-security setup.
Exactly. Now, we all inherently trust that the vault holds immense financial value, but we do not demand that the bank manager swing the doors wide open and just, spread all the cash out on the public sidewalk just so we can personally verify it is really in there.
Right, because doing that, spreading the cash on the sidewalk would instantly compromise the security of the very thing you were trying to prove exists.
Yes.
The value actually requires that boundary to remain, well, valuable.
Precisely. The value is secure precisely because it is hidden. But it is fascinating because when we step into the world of professional identity and how we prove what we have actually accomplished in our careers, that logic suddenly vanishes.
There is this pervasive, almost automatic expectation that if the vault is not wide open, if the raw data is not exposed for everyone to scrutinize, then the gold simply does not exist.
Which creates a really profound tension in the real world, because in a professional context, that gold is not just numbers on a spreadsheet. It is highly sensitive material.
Absolutely.
We are talking about confidential client emails, proprietary corporate strategy, patient medical records. It could be internal HR disputes or employer-owned technical files. You really cannot just put that on the sidewalk. It is the absolute definition of a professional boundary. And that tension, that exact boundary, is what we are exploring today. We are drawing from the Living Professional Record System, specifically Module 2 on evidence literacy. The source material lays out a core doctrine for handling this governed evidence.
Yeah, and it is summarized in this brilliant four-word mandate. Proof is not permission.
Proof is not permission. It is such a crucial concept. So the central question we are debating is this. In the LPR framework, when strict privacy boundaries prevent the exposure of direct evidence, does the concept of a supported claim inherently lose its strength? Or can non-exposed evidence truly serve as valid, rigorous proof?
And we are taking distinct positions on this. I will be arguing that, while maintaining privacy is obviously ethically necessary, hiding or entirely excluding that evidence inherently degrades its verifiable strength, and that risks transforming solid proof back into just a mere claim.
And my position today is that governed evidence, using safe summaries and metadata, maintains the intellectual rigor of a claim without violating privacy. It proves that evidence does not need to be public to be entirely valid. Or, as the module puts it, evidence-rich does not mean evidence exposed.
Let us get right into the mechanics of that then, because the LPR material lays out a whole spectrum for how an advisor should handle this sensitive evidence. It explicitly lists out things like student information, legal material, and private family information, stating these may be entirely unsafe to expose.
Yes, the text is very clear that a client may have a document that supports a claim and still should not upload, share, or publish it. Internal reports, client documents, patient information.
Right, HR matters, proprietary strategy, legal material.
Exactly. Confidential emails, employer-owned technical files, and even private family information. These may be totally unsafe to expose. So the advisor has to teach that proof is not permission.
It is a hard line to walk.
It is, which is why some evidence should be summarized, some should be redacted, some should be recorded as metadata only, some should remain private, and, some should be excluded entirely. The goal is not to collect everything and just dump it on the table. The goal is to preserve enough governed evidence to support truthful, bounded, privacy-safe claims. The truth of a claim simply is not dependent on its public exposure.
Look, I want to acknowledge right away the absolute necessity of that proof is not permission doctrine. Nobody is arguing that a professional should be exposing military operational details or uploading an employer's proprietary source code to a public AI tool just to prove they did their job.
Right, that would be disastrous.
We completely agree on the ethics, but from an epistemic standpoint, From the perspective of how we actually know what we know, if evidence must be heavily summarized or recorded merely as metadata, it severely weakens the source strength.
But does it really?
I think it does. If a third party cannot see the evidence, the chain of trust is broken. A claim that relies heavily on hidden evidence risks slipping right back into that generic, unverified professionalism that the LPR system is trying to cure in the first place.
I completely understand the skepticism, but we need to look at how these mechanisms actually function in practice. Let us take the concept of a metadata-only entry.
Okay.
You are arguing that if an outside observer cannot see the raw data, the claim is unsupported. But I look at governed evidence like a cryptographic zero-knowledge proof.
Wait, you are going to have to break that down for me? I mean, cryptography?
Fair enough, fair enough. So for anyone not deep into cryptography, a zero-knowledge proof is basically a mathematical way to prove to someone that you know a secret password without ever revealing what the actual password is.
Oh, I see.
Right? You run a process that verifies the truth of this statement while keeping the underlying data completely hidden. In the non-digital world, think of a notary seal.
A notary, okay.
A notary verifies that a document exists, that the signatures are real, that the date's in line, they stamp it, but they do not publish the contents of your private will or your mortgage documents to the world.
I see the logic there, I do, but let me tell you why that notary analogy sort of falls short in practice. A notary is a state-sanctioned, legally binding third party with statutory authority.
Sure.
When we talk about an LPR advisor looking at a client's past work, we are talking about a collaborative process of recovering professional memory.
But the advisor is acting as a verifying third party in this system.
Wait, let me stop you there because we really need to visualize what this looks like to the outside world. Let us say a professional claims I led cross-functional process improvement for a Fortune 500 company.
Okay.
And the only evidence attached to that claim is a completely redacted internal client document. Or worse, a metadata tag that essentially just says Confidential Project X 2024, signed by VP.
Right.
To an outside observer, that evidence is functionally useless. It is just an empty envelope.
But the empty envelope proves the letter was sent, though. When we say a metadata-only entry, we mean the advisor records the existence of the document, the dates, the format, the authorization.
Yes, but
without capturing a single word of the actual proprietary strategy discussed inside it. It grounds the claim in reality.
okay, but to a hiring manager, an empty envelope is still just an empty envelope. The text explicitly tells us that an old resume bullet or a LinkedIn summary is just a prior rendering. It is a claim lead, not proof.
Right. We agree on that.
So if your governed evidence is entirely redacted, how is it any different to the reader than a prior rendering? It is just words on a page asking for blind trust.
It is structurally, fundamentally different. The difference between an AI-generated career summary and governed evidence is the presence of underlying operational reality. A prior rendering is just language floating in a vacuum. It asks, how can we make this sound more powerful?
Sure.
Governed evidence, even when represented only by metadata, asks what does the historical record actually support? By capturing the parameters, who was involved, what the constraints were, when it happened, the advisor binds the claim to reality. It prevents the client from drifting into exaggeration because the claim is structurally tethered to a specific moment in time.
Look, if I am listening to this right now, I am probably thinking, this is great theory. But if I redact my sales numbers or hide my concrete deliverables behind a metadata-only tag, the AI resume parser at my dream company is going to throw my application right in the trash.
Yeah, I know.
How does this concept of governed evidence actually survive contact with the real job market?
You know, I actually struggled with that exact tension when I first engaged with this material. It really does feel like we are asking professionals to fight with one hand tied behind their back. If the algorithm wants raw data and we refuse to give it, are we not just hurting the client?
Exactly. The market demands visibility.
But here is how the source material reframed it for me. The LPR advisor is a source governance professional, not a keyword optimizer. If the goal is just to beat an algorithm, sure, dump the raw data, violate your NDA, and cross your fingers.
Which you should not do.
Right. But if the goal is to build a professional identity rooted in verifiable capability, you have to shift the locus of verification. You are not asking the market for blind trust. You are presenting a bounded, truthful claim supported by a rigorous process.
But is it stronger?
A bounded claim supported by a private note or a witness observation is fundamentally stronger than an exaggerated claim built on exposed, unsafe data.
Stronger is a highly subjective word there. Let us look at the concept of underclaiming, which the text defines as a major error. Underclaiming is ignoring evidence the client has not learned to recognize.
Yes.
I would argue that the strict mandate to keep employer-owned tech files or legal material hidden effectively forces the advisor to actively underclaim. The text says some evidence should be excluded entirely.
It does say that, yes.
Let us say I am a software engineer, right? And my greatest accomplishment is this brilliant piece of proprietary code.
Sure.
If I have to exclude that entirely because of a privacy boundary, the resulting professional record is inherently incomplete. I mean, I am purposefully leaving the biggest, heaviest gold bars in the vault and asking the market to judge my wealth based on, I don't know, the silver.
I do not disagree that it feels like a loss, but when you exclude an unsafe document, you are not underclaiming. You are accurately mapping the boundaries of what can be responsibly proven.
But you are leaving out the best part.
The mandate is not to present an exhaustive, omniscient view of the client's entire existence, though. The mandate is to preserve enough governed evidence to support a specific claim. If you cannot show the code base, you rely on other evidence types.
But those other evidence types are inherently weaker if they are just summaries.
Not necessarily. The LPR material explicitly broadens the definition of evidence beyond just official documents. It includes feedback, witness observations, public traces, project notes.
Okay, but
If the code base is excluded entirely, you reconstruct the context safely. Why was the code needed? What problem did it solve? Who used it? That operational context provides its own evidentiary weight because it demonstrates a granular understanding of the work that someone who merely invented the claim just could not produce.
that actually brings us to a perfect transition point, because I want to talk about how this translates into the actual mechanics of proving value. Let us talk about measure clues and operational texture.
Let us do it.
The source material is very strict that measure clues, things like a weekly volume or before and after differences, are not metrics. They are just evidence leads.
Right, you cannot just make up a number.
You cannot invent a hard percentage just because a client remembers that a project saved a lot of time.
Exactly. You have to evaluate what the evidence actually supports rather than what just sounds good.
Exactly. Now, let us apply the privacy filter to that. Suppose a client has exact proprietary financial data showing they saved their company $1.2 million.
Right.
It is verified, it is real, they have the internal accounting reports to prove it. But because of strict confidentiality agreements regarding financial data, they cannot expose it.
Which is a very common scenario.
It is. So the proof is not permission doctrine steps in and forces them to summarize it. Instead of the hard, undeniable metric of 1.2 million, they have to dilute it into a measure clue like reduced repeated follow-up or improved operational consistency. You are taking their strongest, most undeniable evidence and diluting it into vague corporate speak, just to satisfy a privacy boundary. The verifiability is objectively diminished.
Okay, I see exactly where you are coming from. But I strongly disagree that it inevitably translates into vague corporate speak. And here's why. Operational texture.
Go on.
You are assuming that raw numbers, the 1.2 million, are the ultimate highest form of truth. But the LPR material emphasizes that evidence becomes truly meaningful when the advisor recovers the operating reality around it.
Operating reality.
Yes, operational texture asks the deeper questions. What was unclear during the project? What information was missing? What was the risk of misunderstanding?
But how does that replace $1 million metric?
Because the metric is just the outcome. The texture is the capability. Let us make this concrete. Imagine you saved that $1.2 million by stopping a massive server crash over a major holiday weekend, and you had to do it with half your team out sick.
Okay, high pressure.
The raw 1.2 million figure is locked behind an NDA. It is governed evidence. It is safe in the vault. But the story of managing a skeleton crew through a high-stakes holiday crisis, the specific constraints you face, the triage decisions you made, that is your operational texture. And that texture is completely public and privacy safe.
That is a very elegant defense of operational texture. I will give you that. And I do not disagree that a granular, vivid understanding of a crisis is convincing. But we have to be honest about the trade-off here.
What trade-off?
If I tell you I managed a skeleton crew through a crisis, that is a claim. If I show you the audited financial report showing I saved $1.2 million, that is proof.
Well?
When you replace the proof with a highly textured narrative about what was difficult, you are shifting from evidence-based verification to storytelling. Good storytelling, perhaps, but storytelling nonetheless.
It is not just storytelling if it is backed by governed evidence, though. The metadata is still there. The private notes are still in the LPR system.
But the text says a credential proves a bounded fact, not the whole meaning of the work. I agree with that. But similarly, operational texture provides the meaning of the work without necessarily providing the bounded fact.
Interesting.
If the bounded fact is locked behind a privacy wall, the source strength drops. The market evaluates truth based on exposed proof.
True. But let us look at what the text actually says about source strength. Source strength is always claim-specific.
Meaning what?
Meaning, a verified credential might strongly prove you completed a management course, but it weakly supports the claim that you are actually a mature leader in that space. If you want to prove leadership, the raw financial data of $1.2 million saved is not actually the strongest evidence anyway.
Wait, I think the market would heavily disagree with you there. People love numbers. $1 million saved gets you the interview.
They love numbers, sure, but structurally, logically, that number does not prove leadership. It proves a financial outcome.
What proves the leadership is the operational texture, the condition, the constraint, the sequence, the team dynamics, the risk, the decision under pressure.
I see what you are saying.
If you have a private, entirely redacted internal report detailing a complex decision you made that avoided a massive handoff error, and you render that safely through a metadata-only entry backed by your advisor's rigorous process, that speaks far more directly to your leadership capability than a naked, out-of-context spreadsheet.
I hear you, but grounded only means something to the person who holds the private key. You are describing a system that is incredibly rigorous internally, but epistemically opaque externally.
Is it, though? Yes. If I claim I can translate complex technical information into usable documents, and my evidence is an employer-owned technical file that I must exclude entirely under the privacy doctrine, then externally I have no evidence. I have a claim. I may have the internal satisfaction of knowing it is true, but the verifiable strength in the marketplace is zero.
That is a fascinating pushback, but I think you are underestimating the evidentiary weight of restraint.
Restraint?
Yes, the module teaches that evidence must be interpreted, and that interpretation always depends on the claim being made. If the claim is, I am capable of handling highly sensitive, classified security details, the very act of not exposing the evidence, the act of relying on safe summaries and governed metadata, proves your capability.
Okay, yes, the restraint validates the professional judgment. I will give you that in that specific edge case.
Exactly.
But if the claim is, I am a high-volume sales closer, and you redact all the volume metrics to protect the client's proprietary strategy, your restraint does not validate your sales ability, it just obscures it.
I see that.
The tension is unavoidable. Every single time you pull the privacy lever, every time you choose a safe summary over the raw artifact, or a measure clue over a hard metric, you are trading source strength for ethical compliance. Now, it is the right trade to make. It is the ethically necessary trade, but we should not pretend nothing is lost in the transaction.
I appreciate that framing, that it is a trade-off. But I would argue that what is lost is often an illusion of certainty anyway. We talked earlier about credentials, right?
Right.
A project management certificate proves a bounded fact. It feels very certain, very verifiable. but it does not prove mature capability or judgment under pressure. A raw financial document feels very certain, but it does not prove how the client navigated the human elements of the crisis.
It proves they got the result.
But by restricting the raw data, the LPR system forces the client and the advisor to articulate the how and the why. It forces them to look beneath the language and beyond the raw numbers. It forces them to extract the operational reality. In doing so, governed evidence might actually produce a truer, more holistic representation of the professional's capability than a dumped pile of exposed artifacts ever could.
That is a compelling argument. But have you considered that you are asking the market to completely rewire how it evaluates truth?
Maybe a little.
The market likes exposed artifacts. The LPR Academy is training advisors to be source governance professionals to literally say, the goal is not to collect everything. The goal is to preserve enough to support truthful, bounded, privacy-safe claims. That is a massive paradigm shift. You're asking the world to accept the empty envelope, to trust the notary's seal without ever seeing the notary.
Perhaps we are, but consider the alternative. If the alternative is the reckless exposure of patient medical information, proprietary corporate code, internal HR disputes, and private family caregiving details just to satisfy an algorithmic resume parser, then the paradigm absolutely needs to shift.
Yeah, it does.
The human cost of exposure is just too high. Evidence before wording is the core discipline, and proof is not permission.
On that, we are in absolute alignment. The ethical baseline of the LPR system is unquestionably correct. No client should ever violate confidentiality, breach employer trust, or upload sensitive internal reports simply to prove a point on a professional surface.
Exactly.
The real-world consequences of exposure far outweigh the benefits of a marginally stronger resume bullet.
It is about protecting the worker, protecting the organizations they serve, while still allowing them to articulate their value rigorously.
I completely agree. My caution remains solely on the epistemic side. We must remain highly aware that when we rely on safe summaries, redactions, and metadata, we are asking for a leap of trust from the audience. We are restricting access to the source material, and in the strict, literal sense of verifiability, that diminishes the undeniable objective strength of the evidence. We have to recognize that tension rather than pretending a summary is exactly as powerful as the artifact itself.
And I think that is a very fair, clear-eyed place to land. Navigating this tension between the market's demand for verifiability and the ethical necessity of privacy is arguably one of the most sophisticated challenges in modern professional identity.
It really is.
As we have explored today, the living professional record system provides a rigorous framework for this, acknowledging that evidence is not just a pile of documents and that the strongest claim is the truest supportable claim, not necessarily the most exposed one. There is so much more nuance to explore in the LPR Academy material regarding source strength, evidence classification, and how to effectively map this governed evidence to actual claims.
It truly is a fascinating landscape. The discipline required to look at a piece of evidence, say an employer-owned technical file, and ask, what does this actually prove, and is it safe to share, before ever writing a single word? It is profound.
It is. Which brings us back to our vault on the sidewalk. Maybe the real value of our professional identity is not proven by throwing the vault doors open for anyone walking by to examine.
I think you are right.
Maybe the deepest professional trust is established not by exposing the gold, but by demonstrating that we know exactly how to govern it, how to protect it, and how to speak truthfully about the weight of it while keeping the door firmly locked. Leave that vault secure. Thank you for joining us, and we will see you next time on The Debate.